The NFL franchise tag window has opened, and there's a couple of guys New England could decide to franchise tag. Would you rather tag Kyle Dugger and keep the young rising safety in town, or perhaps Mike Onwenu, who losing him would leave a huge void on your offensive line? Type KD if it's Kyle Dugger, the real KD, by the way, or MO for Mike Onwenu. Let us know, and Rolly joins me next as he's back from vacation on today's show. I'm Harrison Graham. Welcome into Patriots Today by Chat Sports. On today's show, what player, if any, should New England franchise tag between now and March 5th? That is the window of when teams can tag players. Now, you look at by position what the tag estimations are this year, and this is it. And so when you look at those two players we talked about, Mike Onwenu and Kyle Dugger, offensive line $19.8 million. That's a steep price for Mike Onwenu, but again, you don't have great offensive tackle options if you let him and Trent Brown go. And Kyle Dugger, $16.2 million. Again, a steep price for a safety, but I would argue one of the best young players on this roster, so you could certainly justify that as well. Let's talk first here about Kyle Dugger, because I do think he is the top clear tag candidate, and if I had to put my money on who I think they would franchise tag, it would be Kyle Dugger. Now, Rolly, first of all, welcome back from sunny Florida. And second of all, Spotrac has it in kind of the similar franchise tag range of what a contract projection could look like. That's just over $16 million per year down there.
Yeah, it really is basically the same number as the franchise tag. And when you look at a potential Mike Onwenu deal, which we'll get to in just a bit, that is slightly less in an extension than the franchise tag. So if you wanted to get complete value on Dugger, it would make sense to franchise tag him. You can do a tag and then extend where you really keep that money the same. And listen, out of Lenoir Rye, second-round pick, like he's been all that you can ask for, and he's improved almost every single year. I really am a big fan of Kyle Dugger's game, and especially when Adrian Phillips was cut, but that was expected. Your safety room is getting thinner and thinner as the days go on, and current safeties under contract, well, it's really nothing more than just Jabril Peppers. So you really need to keep the safety room intact. That was one of the best parts of this defense last season. Dugger and Peppers were fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, that's a point I outlined on a recent video is that, look, Adrian Phillips wasn't a starter anymore. Cutting him to save the $3 million makes sense, but it even makes much more of a necessity, in my opinion, to keep Kyle Dugger. Like, sure, could you find his replacement? We'll take a look at some guys in a second for a cheaper price tag. Yeah, you probably could, but sometimes it's just better to stick with what you know, and what we know is that the Dugger-Peppers combo was pretty damn good last year. And again, like, if you give him an extension, that doesn't mean he is a guy that's going to be here for 3 or 4 more years. Maybe you trade him a year or two down the road if you have a young player developing or whatever the case may be. But I think keeping him is vital, Rolly. If you don't, you really need a clear plan in place to replace him. But, I mean, he's homegrown. He's young. I think you're seeing more and more teams, like, delve and invest into those playmaking safeties. I mean, you look at like a Jesse Bates last year. He goes to Atlanta, gets a huge contract, and I think he had, 6 or 7 picks last year, had a huge year. Kyle Dugger's been a guy that has taken the football away, so I think he's a guy that I would like to keep.
Yeah, and the one thing that I like about Dugger, and Jerod Mayo said this at his introductory press conference, is you get the seeds in the building and you water them and watch them grow. He's a fan of keeping homegrown players in the building and paying them because they know what the system's about. They know what the coaching staff is all about. So I think keeping Kyle Dugger is really the only good option here. And it just sends a message as well. It's like, well, if we draft you, you perform, we're going to pay you. So you really need to set that precedent, in my opinion, especially under a new staff of Eliot Wolf at Shadow GM and Jerod Mayo at head coach. Now, I will play devil's advocate here, Harrison. If there was a position that you could maybe rely on finding a replacement in free agency, safety might be it. I only grabbed the top 5 guys outside of Kyle Dugger, but Antoine Winfield might get tagged, likely will get tagged. Cameron Curl, Xavier McKinney, Geno Stone, and Julian Blackmon are all solid options to replace Duggar if he ends up walking.
Yeah, I'll break this down into tiers the way I see it. I think Winfield and Curl are kind of in the same tier as Duggar of okay, you can dump Duggar, but even if Winfield or Curl are available, you're talking about similar money most likely. So it's almost like you might as well just keep the guy you have. McKinney, I think, is probably in that $10 to $12 million range. He's a little bit more of a vet, but I still think he's going to cash in. Geno Stone's an interesting player, Rolly. If you want to chime back in here, he got deployed in this 3-safety scheme that Baltimore ran the last 3 years and really was just used as a ball hawk. He's not going to give you a ton in run support, but his knack for the football is impressive. 9 breakups as that, number 3 safety in that system last year. 7 interceptions, just always around the football. Now, is that inflated production on an awesome defense and the ball just found him, or is he ready to be a full-time starter? I think that's a fair question. Julian Blackmon and Stone, I think, are in that probably $5 to $7 million range. And then I'll throw an Eddie Jackson in there too, Rolly. The Bears just cut him. I still think he's a starting safety in this league. If you want to go cheaper, there are options, but it's kind of be careful what you wish for. You mentioned the point of setting the precedent, hey, this guy's put in 4 good years here, and you're just going to let him walk and go cheaper. What are other future free agents going to think about that? So you got to play that kind of fine balance of, okay, we're not going to reset the market every time someone hits the market, but homegrown talent is something we're going to value as well.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point there with Geno Stone, someone who's around the ball a lot, turns the ball over on that defensive side. That's the one thing I love about Kyle Duggar. He plays in the box at times, or he did under Bill Belichick's
225.
Defense. He is not afraid to get in the mix and help stop the run, and you love that from the safety position. Same with Jabril Peppers, in all honesty. That's why the safety tandem back there was so dynamic. They could play coverage. They can defend tight ends in one-on-one situations, but they're also not afraid to make some tackles in the box. Kyle Duggar had 100-plus tackles last season. He is someone who is all over the football field. To me, there's some solid replacement options on this list you see, but I think I'm going to continue to say the best option is still at home.
Yeah, and again, you could argue a Winfield is better, but the price is going to be the same, if not more. So why not just keep Kyle Duggar? So that's kind of our stance on that. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. When the Patriots make moves, we drop videos. When news and rumors are floating around this team, we cover that as well. So don't miss out. Busy offseason ahead. Free agency around the corner. Combine next week. We got the draft as well. Going to be a fun couple of months here on Patriots Today. Don't miss out. Subscribe. Let's talk about Mike Onwenu now. And yes, there is a third player we will discuss as well. Mike Onwenu contract projection, Rolly, 4 years, $58 million. So, $14.5 million per year. Obviously, that tag number is $19 million. So, I think there's an outside shot they could tag him. I think it would almost certainly be hey, we're tagging you, but you're not going to play under this price tag. This is just to buy us more time to work out a long-term deal. Whereas in Duggar's case, he could actually just play under the tag. Solid player. I don't think he's elite, Rolly, but I think a little leverage Onwenu could have here is, unlike Duggar, there's less of a kind of strong free agent offensive tackle class out there. And you know why? Because good offensive linemen don't hit free agency. I mean, that's kind of the general rule because there's just not that many of them.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Onwenu, and he's so versatile too. He's played everywhere. He's started at right tackle, then moved inside the right guard, played back at right tackle this past season. I think that's the correct home for him because he started off his career as a rookie so well at that right tackle position. I am a big fan of keeping Onwenu there at right tackle if the Patriots do re-sign him. We'll take a look at the offensive line depth chart and where we currently stand in a second and some potential replacements for him. But Onwenu has been able to be a mainstay on this offensive line. Also has stayed healthy over his first 3 or 4 seasons in New England, which is very important as well. I'm a big proponent of keeping him as well.
Yeah, we'll talk about him here in just a moment. But first, do have to show our sponsor some love. That, of course, is Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. And again, guys, just because football is over doesn't mean you can't play daily fantasy sports with Prize Picks. You got tons of other sports, NBA All-Star break wrapping up. So you got second half action there. You got the NHL playing every single night, college hoops as well, esports. And why I love Prize Picks is First of all, it's very easy. You download the app, PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS. Get that deposit match up to $100. It is the largest DFS app in North America. What does that tell you? It's a popular app. Users like using it. You will as well. You get daily specials, some discounts sometimes, different sports available, and just the simplicity, again, is what has really sold me on PrizePicks. You pick 2 to 6 players on your entry and select more or less on the stat projections. There's nothing complicated about it. It's very simple. If you hit, you make money. It's as simple as that. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Like we said, use the code CLNS. Get that deposit match up to $100. You are not going to regret it. Okay, you look at this offensive line situation. We've talked about it ad nauseum, Rolly. But again, while Trent Brown and Mike Onwenu aren't elite players, they are starting caliber players. So to lose both of them, it really creates a problem on your offensive line. I mean, you already have to figure out quarterback. You already got to add wide receivers. So you can't really afford to lose both. And if you do lose both, then you have to invest in a free agent. Like that, you cannot enter the draft, Rolly, with question marks at both tackle spots.
No, and I am just going to flat out say right now, you can't lose both of them. And when we're looking at the outlook of this Patriots offensive line and free agency, Trent Brown is as good as gone. Let's just face the facts here. He had a very uneasy end to his season last year where he was a healthy scratch, didn't play, and now that may have been because of Bill Belichick. He's gone. How does the new regime feel about Trent Brown? I would like to just cut bait. Going to be honest.
Rip the Band-Aid.
We've seen him come and go before. Just get rid of him. Find a new franchise left tackle. But you keep the right tackle. And now you only have to replace Trent Brown at left tackle, whether that be in free agency or the draft. Say this, there's not many good free agents out there, which is why it's imperative that you keep Mike Onwenu, whether it be on the tag or free agency. Because you said it in our pre-show discussion, Harrison. You're not getting Tyron Smith. If he leaves Dallas, he's going to a contender.
Yeah, I mean, Tyron, not to cut you off, Tyron Smith, like, he's a lifer in Dallas. If they don't want him back, he's not going to a upstart in New England. Like, he's going to sign with the Chiefs if they look to upgrade from Donovan Smith, or he's going to go to Philadelphia. Like, insert proven veteran contender. That is where you go. Doesn't mean the Patriots can't have a good season next year, but he's not going to do what Zeke did. Like, it's just not. You're going to have teams that want his services, so he's not an option. You mentioned ripping the Band-Aid off of Trent Brown. I'm intrigued by Becton a little bit, Rolly, as like a stopgap option, but again, not if you lose both. Like, I kind of like the idea of, okay, bring back Mike Onwenu. Maybe you give Becton a 1-year incentive-laden deal to compete for left tackle with like a second or third round pick. You have a couple of options over there, and if he wins the job, great. The rookie can be the swing tackle. But Jonah Williams, he's okay. He can play both sides, which you like. Illuminor, he's kind of more of just a right tackle. So, yeah, the options aren't great. Is $15 million a year for Onwenu an overpay? Probably, but what are your options? Like, it's not like you've got great options there, and you could say, sure, well, let's take one in the first round of the draft. Okay, so who's the quarterback then? So, like, don't have one problem turn into two problems. Just re-sign Mike Onwenu, and then you have more flexibility.
I think I don't want to go full macro here, but I just think it's like you re-sign Mike Onwenu. You don't really have to deal with the free agent offensive tackle market. Maybe you sign a cheap one as a swing backup tackle, something like that. But then you just address offensive tackle in the second round, and you go quarterback at 3, and then you take OT at 34, whether it be a Jordan Morgan, a Patrick Paul, or one of those other second-round offensive tackle guys. That's kind of how I would attack that offensive line with quarterback situation. But who knows, maybe they trade back from number 3 and take Olu or Joe Alt at 6, 7, 8 range or something like that.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. We did want to mention Josh Uche, Rolly. You know, coming off 2022, I think if he had a similar season, he'd be a prime candidate here, but just wasn't the same player this last year. The production pretty much evaporated, for being completely honest. Now, I still like the player. I could see bringing him back in some scenario, but the franchise tag, just the cost of it doesn't really equate to the player that's been here for 3 of the 4 seasons. He had the 1 really good year, 3 not so great.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to franchise tag Uche when it'd be $20 million.
No.
That just simply is not worth it. And if we're going to be transparent here and put our cards on the table when it comes to Josh Uche, I don't think he's going to return. Why do I think he's not going to return? It would have to be on a 1-year deal, because when you think about the money that the Patriots have to spend, they're going to allot a lot of that on the offensive side of the ball. And if Uche is looking to break the bank on a multi-year deal on $10+ million, I don't think that really fits the timeline in New England. If you're going to give me a 1-year or 2-year, $8 million annual deal, I'm cool with that. But if you've only had one good season in your first 4, I'm not going to go spend double-digit $1 million on you like a team maybe like Atlanta who's been starving for a pass rusher will. I think that's a good fit for Josh. I just don't see him returning to New England if he's looking for a multi-year deal that's going to make him annually more than $10 million.
I think the one avenue where he returns is first wave of free agency comes and goes, second wave, money is dried up around the league, and he hasn't found a deal that he likes. And then, you know, him and his agent in New England kind of circle back together in late March, you know, before the draft. Like, hey, man, 1 year, $7 million? Like, you know, what are your other options at this point? I mean, we saw it last year. Now it was with older, more veteran types, Rolly, but like Clowney and Gakwe, these guys waited forever to sign deals. Does Uche fall into that like third, fourth tier of edge rushers of like he wants deal A, but deal A is not there and he has to settle for a 1-year deal? In that scenario, I'd bring him back. But to your point, 2 years, $12 million a year, something like that, the production doesn't justify it considering the amount of needs this team has on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, I mean, I just completely agree. So I'm kind of almost eliminating Uche from the discussion.
Agreed.
I want to revisit the question that we offered at the top of the show. Pick one to tag. If you're going to stick with Kyle Duggar or stick with Mike Onwenu, which one would you like to see the Patriots franchise tag? What do you believe benefits New England the most? We asked you off the top, did any of our conversation sway you either way? Let us know down below. And to be honest, our answer is Kyle Duggar. And the reason why is kind of what we outlined in terms of money. I think you could get Mike Onwenu on a $14-15 million deal annually in terms of millions of dollars over 3 or 4 seasons. With Duggar, I think what he would earn on the open market is that franchise number of 15 or 16 mil. So it just makes a lot more sense financially for New England to franchise Duggar and try to work something out long-term with Onwenu, unless you want to tag and then buy you more time like you mentioned earlier. It just makes more sense with Duggar.
Yeah, I think Duggar's the answer, and, you know, hopefully you do get a long-term deal done before the July deadline if you do tag him. And, you know, again, I think he's been the most consistent player. I still think he's an improving player. I think playmaking safeties have value. And look, I want to keep Mike Onwenu, but I also don't want to enter free agency with a $19 million cap hit for an average to above average right tackle. Like, I'd rather take the chance of him hitting the market. Ideally, that doesn't happen. You just re-sign him before free agency, but I'm doing that before I'm letting Duggar negotiate with other teams and risking losing one of your youngest and most promising players. That's just kind of the way I see it. All right, guys. Appreciate everybody for making it to the end of the video. We will be back tomorrow with more Patriots content, so subscribe, turn on that notification bell. We'll see you then.